Welcome back to the Freedom Kickstarter podcast. Today I've got a guest with me I've known for quite a while, online and offline. We've got Mark Council. So as always, I'll throw it over to the guests to introduce themselves. So Mark, give us your elevator pitch.
Hello, Mike. Thanks for having me on. I think we first met online back 8 or 9 years ago. A lot's changed since then. So I operate Platform Personal Training Gym, which is a personal training specific facility. We have a team there who run that, and we're looking to expand that this year. And then in the last 18 months, we started running Relentless Business Mentoring, which is a company where we help small businesses essentially to organise their operations and then improve marketing, sales, and help that kind of start up or very early business to organise themselves and lay the foundation for them to grow from.
Nice, like it. So one of the main reasons why I want you on is because I think we've got a very similar ethic in terms of like hard work, putting in the graft, basically doing the work up front to have the business you want later down the line. So I'm always interested by sort of people's origin stories. So tell me a bit about the story of when you started the gym to begin with.
Yeah, so I definitely wouldn't recommend anyone do it this way, but this is how we did it. So I started in 2015. There was myself and another guy in a unit where essentially it was two separate businesses in one unit. Unsurprisingly, didn't really work. Looking back, there's a lot of reasons I can see why that didn't. It's kind of obvious now, but at the time we went into it kind of naively. Didn't work out. We separated from that unit. As we separated from that unit, I was looking around for where I was going to move to. Found a unit a couple of miles away, but it was completely derelict. And at this time as well, I was talking to who is now my business partner, Steve. We'd known each other for years, and we kind of had it was at the end of one night, so he was training in my old facility, and I just said jokingly to him, "Don't fancy running a gym, do you?" And he just kind of like left it at that. At the time, he was in the plumbing trade, but he was just toying with the idea of starting MNU and doing his nutrition qualifications. So anyway, the week after he came back, and I was complaining about something again, and said, "Don't fancy running a gym, do you?" And he didn't laugh this time. He kind of said, "Well, actually, I've been thinking about that, and yeah, I do." So I was like, "Say no more. Let's do it." So he went and got his qualifications, and in that time, we found this unit that was derelict and signed a lease for it. So that was 2016 we signed for it, but it was January 17 when we got the keys. The building was completely derelict. I'm talking like broken windows, like no real electric supply, water supply, like no ceilings, like holes in the floor. So we spent 4 months renovating it with absolutely no money. Took out a loan for a car, which was all thrown into that building. So at that time, I was working full time. I think I was doing my masters. I was coming to the end of my master's degree. Was running the unit for the first couple of months. Then that closed, and then we just focused on the renovation. And then so it was sort of finish work, come home, 5 p.m., change into sort of clothes to decorate, go to what is now a platform, decorate that gym, and repeat for like 4 months. We finally got the doors open then in April of 17. And it's kind of gone on from there.
Nice. And in terms of that initial stage, I think we talked about this a bit before, but a lot of people, they're very much afraid or they're resistant to kind of doing that hard work and putting in a lot of hours because ultimately the result isn't guaranteed. Like you start a business, it's an educated gamble, but it's still a gamble. What was sort of the thought process for you? Were you very single-minded of like, we have to make this work, or was there a bit of trepidation, like this could all be a massive waste of time and energy?
So I got to a point where I was stressing about the job I was doing. So when I finished my undergrad to pay for my master's degree, I got a job working essentially on building sites, fitting fire alarms, CCTV, stuff like that. And I got to a point where I was doing the masters and working that job, and the plan was at the end of that, finishing the masters, or some point during it, I'd get employment. Um, and I got to a point where I was waking up stressing about that job, and I was like, "This isn't even a job that I want to do for life. This is just like literally a stopgap." And I'm waking up stressed about this job, and I just thought, if I can work a job which is supposed to be a temporary job and be stressed about it, I might as well be stressed about my own problems. So that was kind of the thing that made me just think, I just need to make this work. And so when I got the ball rolling, I got platform opened and so on. For the first 12 months, I carried on working that job, and then platform was just ran in the evenings. So we opened 6 p.m. and closed at 10 p.m. And then on a weekend, I think we did something like 7 a.m. till 3 p.m., something like that, on Saturday, Sunday. And I think without that sort of first year, we couldn't have made that happen. And at the time, I remember speaking with yourself, and I think you told me early in your career you kept like a Saturday job where it just provided some routine and income. And that was poignant for me, like hearing that from yourself back then, because it kind of reinforced the idea that that what I was doing wasn't crazy and that eventually it could work out.
I think that's the thing. Yeah, I had the when I was starting off my PT career in Southampton, I actually got, yeah, you're right, it was a Saturday job, and I worked a Wednesday for a bit as well in a running shoe shop. So it was literally just, I think it paid like about £120 a week, maybe not even that, but it was enough whereby when I was starting that business, it gave me a bit of leeway. It wasn't like this has to work right now. It was kind of like, okay, this gives me about a 4-month bridge to kind of build it up. So yeah, I'm completely on board with that, and I also think there's nothing wrong. People start businesses in different ways. Some people do like very slow and steady. Other people, it's much more the whole jump off the cliff and grow wings on the way down. Other people, it's more kind of what you did, what I did, which I think is keep something on that gives you a bit of security, but also have it in mind that this isn't forever. Like, I'm doing this for reasons, whether it's doing a second job, whether it's like yourself doing crazy hours. Again, when I did PT, I think at one stage I was doing over 50 sessions a week and driving around to people. I think as long as you have that in mind, that this is temporary and it's for a reason, actually you can stomach 2 or 3 years of that, really, which...
Yeah, 100%. And I think from the work that we do now with Relentless, and we help businesses go from start up into kind of, I guess, a fully fledged business, if you will. One thing that I found with those people who are at that startup point, which I can resonate with because it weren't long ago that I was there, it certainly feels that way, that most people are a lot closer to being full-time with that than they think. And we had one woman who came into our mentorship who had set herself the goal that within 12 months she wanted to be full-time in a job. She signed up to like an initial 12 weeks, and I think it was like week 7 she went full-time. And it was purely the belief that she had in herself, and those like self-limiting beliefs and the kind of way that you're programmed to feel like the safety and security of a corporate job is the way to sort of go through life. But so she felt like it was a massive risk to go on her own, but actually I think she found, and I found, a lot of people will find that it's actually probably less riskful on your own than it is working for someone else, because you are fully in charge of your salary, your outcomes, and so on. And I think a lot of, or maybe not a lot of jobs, but some jobs aren't as risk free as they look from the outside. Certainly, I think.
Yeah, let's dive into that, because I found it really interesting. For example, the first time I realised it was when I went to get my first mortgage, and realising how many more hoops you have to jump through as a self-employed person. So back then I didn't have a limited company, but was doing like perfectly well financially and sort of had visions of what I'd be able to afford. And I remember the mortgage advisor telling me, I was like, that just doesn't make sense. He said, yeah, it's because you're seen as riskier. And I get that statistically you probably are, but to me, I was like, at that time, I think I probably had about 30, 35 personal training clients. I had probably 15 or so online clients, and I was writing for about 3 or 4 people. And I was like, I've got probably 50 plus people paying me money. The chance of all of those 50 suddenly saying, I don't want to pay you any money anymore, versus being in a job where they go, oh, you're fired. Okay,
Yep.
You might have a notice period, you might have, severance pay. But I just found it utterly bizarre. But I think that's just kind of what society says. Society says, go to university because that's a safe bet. Get a job because that's a safe bet. I'm like, I don't think it is really.
So here's a crazy situation for you. When I applied for my first mortgage, it was 21. So I was in the middle of COVID. And so and gyms in COVID were classed as high risk for lenders. So the bank, so initially, it's a long story, but I'll cut to the fun bit. Basically, we had to go with a high risk lender because as the job that I had, being self-employed in the middle of COVID, it was classed as high risk. At the very same time, literally the same month that I was going through this process, we employed an operations assistant to come work for us, who was middle of a mortgage application when she started. And basically, she came to us and said, like, in order for me to carry on with a mortgage application, I need you to write me a letter to say that, like, this is, like a permanent job. I'm not on a probation, etc., etc. So literally, I wrote out a letter for her that said, like, she is fully employed by Platform. This is not a temporary job. This is her salary, and her position is indefinite, sort of thing. Give her that letter. She got a mortgage accepted like immediately. Me, who's the head of that company that she's just got it accepted for, but because she's PAYE and fully employed, and I'm self-employed, I couldn't get a mortgage, and because I wrote a letter for her, she could get a mortgage. It's crazy. There is definitely pros and cons to being self-employed. We was kind of laughing before about the fact that I think most people think of their job as it's safe, it's secure, and so I'll stick with this rather than kind of go down the route of opening my own thing. And I think I don't know if you've ever seen the Jim Carrey speech that he gave when he was given like an honorary degree, and he tells a story of the fact that his dad stopped his pursuit of a comedy career, his dad's career, to raise his family and kind of help them flourish. So at the age of Jim Carrey being like 5 or 6, he got a job as an accountant. And then when he was about 14, when Jim Carrey was about 14, his dad was let go of that accountancy job. And Jim Carrey in this speech basically tells the fact that his dad taught him a lot of like life lessons, and one of those was that you can fail doing the safe job, so you might as well fail doing the thing that you want to do. And I think that's it. Like one thing that I've seen through running a business and employing people is that that job is only as secure as sort of the company it's in, and I think a lot of companies, even the big companies you see, they take on a lot of venture debt. They can go under, or they can really struggle with cash flow. So in my mind, you might as well be the master of your own destiny in that sense, and then relying on someone not getting the trappings of money that comes their way and disappearing and the company going under.
Yeah, I certainly think from some of the people I know in terms of other business owners who've got large operations, or in terms of people who actually go into businesses and look at the financials, you often don't realize how precarious your employer can be.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely there's a lot of validity to that. So in terms of like, we'll backtrack and go like starting the gym. Obviously now super successful, like you mentioned earlier, looking at opening up more locations. What was that process like from going to like, okay, we're open 4 hours per night and on a weekend? I'm guessing kind of, there was that typical business owner struggle to get the first few people in the door. What's been the process, and what's been most useful to you for actually growing the business and revenue?
So, it's almost like two separate questions there of like how we did the logistics of the growing it, and then how we did the actual growth of it. So the growth of it, I do credit yourself for a lot of that. Yourself and Steve came on in. I think it was about 8-9 years ago that I jumped into the business of words.
Yep.
Tebow Turbo,
Yeah.
as it was affectionately known.
I was not fantastic at naming things back then.
But as part of that mentorship, so I think I joined that when platform was maybe a couple of months old. I'm not even sure if I joined it when it was in the old unit. But through the course of that, I learned so much from you guys on copywriting. I think that was probably the biggest thing I got from it, was sort of realising that words could sort of invoke emotion, but push someone along that cycle of not knowing who you are into, I need to purchase from this person. And funnily enough, I remember almost going through your psychological funnel when I reached out to you the first time, because I remember the message that I sent you said something like, "Hey Mike, I don't know what you sell, but I just feel like I need to work with you." And I always remember your reply was like, "Oh, thanks for this message. I'm just busy at the moment, but I just wanted to let you know that I've received it and I'll get back to you as soon as I can." And I just thought that was like a class reply. And then basically whatever you told me you were selling, I would have bought, and I did. But it was super useful. We jumped into Tebow. I remember asking questions like, he was talking about landing pages, and I was like, "What's a landing page?" And I remember like Steve answering that and explaining like, it's a page that's designed to help someone purchase, and here's why it's different to an and just learning the real basics of I guess marketing and funnels, and but then from yourself understanding with the copywriting, real simple things at first of benefits, not features, but then taking that into like fascinations, and it just made me think about marketing completely differently. And like every single since whenever it was 17, 18, when started working with yourself across the whole market and thinking about it differently, like every single thing that we put out, like what is the customer thinking? How would the customer want to receive this? It's no good saying it in my language. It's no good saying it in a way that makes me feel good. I need to sit in that customer's shoes and think, how does the customer need to receive this in order to think, that's me, I could benefit from that. So I think like that underpinning of the copywriting, and then learning the fundamentals of like funnels and all that kind of stuff. So we took platform, when we opened platform, I think we was doing like $2 or $3 grand a month. And this is when I was still working full time, and it was just open in the evenings. And I think through the course of a couple of years of working with yourself, we got it up to like 200 grand a year before we spent any money on paid advertising. And that was purely through really sort of punching above our weight organically in terms of what we did in terms of sales, from social media and email. And I think one thing that I found in that period was the kind of follower number, the like number. Essentially, it's not that it doesn't matter, but it really doesn't matter in terms of sales. Like the amount of sales that we were generating organically compared to like the following the page had, and the same on Instagram, like Facebook and Instagram. Like we was really punching above our weight, and I kind of got into a headspace of I'd rather get everyone who sees us buy than follow, and that really catapulted us for probably the first 2 or 3 years. I think it was about 2.5, 3 years in where we then started to run some paid advertising, but really heavy on email. You know, sort of 2 to 3 times a week. I had a look back actually on our system and worked out how many I'd sent, and I think since like 2019 we've averaged like 4 a week. So. You know, we've really gone heavy with it. Like, I always make sure there's 3 a week that goes out, and every now and again, then I'll, you know, scale it up if we're doing a launch or something. But I think the things that we learned from yourself in terms of how to take a story and turn that into something that can convey how you can support people, how you can really dig into that story of a customer that you've helped and convey it in a way that the next customer can understand it and purchase from it. I think all of that kind of stuff that we learned early on was just underpinned the whole marketing for the company going forwards. So from that really created like a lot of organically inbound leads that we over time got better at closing. So as the business grew from that, we got better at referrals, we got better at that word of mouth marketing, and that just organically grew what we did. So from that, in 2018, I went full-time into platform. So I dropped the full-time job that I had, the safe job, and went into platform full-time then. And then I think it was August, my business partner did it. So initially we was just open 6-10 in the evening, but then I did a Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning as well. And then in the August, my business partner then went full time. So we were then open every morning, every evening. When we took the unit on, it was over 2 floors, but we only renovated 1 floor. So then in 2019, we renovated the top floor and like expanded the timetable out. And then that was when we started to bring coaches in to support us delivering that timetable, and then kind of grew out from there. And I think it was probably middle of 19 was when we started to run paid ads, because we now had like double the space, and we'd got to a point where we'd really squeezed the organic as hard as we could. And you get to a point in a gym where let's say your retention's 5%. If you've got 50 members, you know, you're losing 2 or 3 a month. Once you get to 200 members, you know, you're losing like 10, 12 maybe members a month. So you get to a point where your new inbound people is matching the people that are leaving, unless you can accelerate that lead gen through paid advertising. So we kind of hit that point in like 2019, and then that was when we pushed that button and started to grow there.
Nice. How many people have you got working for you now?
There is 9 in the business currently.
Wow.
Yeah, brings its challenges.
Yeah, I can imagine. I think what you said about kind of the messaging, putting yourself in the reader's shoes, all that stuff's really important, but people tend to forget it quite easily. And maybe it's unfair, but it seems almost especially in fitness that I see this, because I still work with a few people in fitness, and getting them out of the headspace of just saying like, oh, for an online program, say, oh, we've got weekly check-ins, and you know, or I've got, you know, this many qualifications, or people saying, oh, I care more about my clients than any other coach. And I think trouble is, even if that is true, everyone else is saying that, and it just kind of blends in with the noise. So how have you found over the years that you've been able to do that? Like, is there any sort of strategies, any tactics you've used to go, okay, this isn't about me, it's about the reader. I'm going to write copy that appeals solely to them.
Yeah, there's a few things there. Just to go on that point that you said about when people put out like the same things, the one that really makes me laugh about gyms is where they'll advertise the equipment they've got. And they'll say like, we've got a Lyco and we've got Black Box, and it's like there's no one who's there's 3 to 5% of the gym going population that will go there because it's got a Lyco. I've probably been generous there. It's probably less than that. And I think it just shows like how little they understand about what the customer's there for. And the one that, as a real side note, the one that really gets me is our sort of local council-run gyms are really poor at that, and it annoys me. Steve, my business partner, laughs at the fact that I take umbrage at the fact that the marketing of the council gyms is really bad, and because I feel like the fact that it's council funded is almost like it should be like the best in the area if that money is being used in that way. And yeah, they're like promoting the fact that, oh, look at the brand new Spinx E760 bikes that we've just bought. Like, no one's there because you've got these bikes. Anyway, I digress. The sort of things that we do. So I think the issue is that you can't just say we're different. You got to show that you're different. So you have to like visually and verbally like show that things are different in what you do. So we advertise, when you look on our social media, you'll see people in fancy dress, you'll see pizza on the gym floor, you'll see bottles of beer. And it's no good for us saying we're different than every gym you've been to. We've got to show why it's different to than every gym you've been to. And I think with that, our kind of ethos across it all is that the brand, the marketing, the operations, the sales, they've all got to be congruent. And I think the fact that platform has always been marketed on the fact it's different. So that means the service has got to be different, which means the operations has got to be different, which means that the whole thing, start to finish, has got to be authentically different than what they would experience from everywhere else. And I think that's, again, like early on, and wrapping my head around the fact that the marketing had to be different. It was like, oh, well, so the branding should be different as well. So actually, the operation should be a little bit different as well, and it kind of like had that domino effect through the rest of the service. So yeah, I think the biggest thing with that is not just saying the things that you do, but like showing them as well. And then really understanding the customer. So we did a lot early on of like surveys, and we did that across the different stages of the funnel. So we surveyed leads that had never purchased. We surveyed people who just signed up. We surveyed members who've been with us for quite some time, and asked them the same questions. And essentially, it was like, what is it that you're struggling with, and why did you reach out to us in the first place? What was the first thing you experienced? How did you find your first week? What do you think now you've been here for some time? What's been your biggest achievement, etc., etc. And then we kind of pulled them out of the different places people were in our ecosystem, and it started to paint a picture of like, people who join before they join us feel like this, but then people who have been with us for a couple of months now feel like this. So that allowed us to then go, well, if we talk about this on our social media, we're going to attract that person and move them down that funnel. And now if we talk about this we think is what people feel like just before they purchase. So if we then run that inside our call to actions, like we might get more of those over the line and so on. So we did a lot of like surveying to really understand the customer. And now it's a lot of, we have like an automated feedback system that goes out through our CRM, where we really pay attention to the things that people say in that feedback and kind of like read between the emotions that people are telling us, and then use that to convey that of, do you feel like this? Well, so did Jan, and now she feels like this because XYZ. If you'd like to feel like Jan, click the link below. Like simple stuff like that. But I guess it's simple when you know it and you've done it, but maybe not so simple if you're not aware of it.
Well, I think people almost like to complicate things, and people try and run before they can walk with marketing, with copy, with all that kind of stuff, because it does seem fancy and sexy to follow the latest advice from whatever guru, or this month's latest trend with what to do on Instagram and everything. But ultimately, you've kind of pointed out there, customers and prospects will often give you what you should say. It is a research process. So I often see copy as almost like you're collecting the puzzle pieces and then putting them together. It's not like you're having to create everything from scratch. Yes, there's a degree of creativity involved, obviously, and that's when you move higher up the sort of sophistication levels of marketing. But for most businesses, especially like a gym, boot camp, that kind of business, actually, your clients and customers will tell you what you need to know. You might need to reframe it or rephrase it slightly, but it's kind of there. You just basically need to ask them.
Yeah, completely agree. And I think that it starts out as, you've got to take a good educated guess at what you think it is, but then very quickly as you get that feedback, you can refine, and then it probably not take you too long if you're paying attention to the things that people are telling you, that you'll get it right. And then at that point, then it is much easier to get that inbound lead gen and accelerate the business essentially.
Yeah,
I think that has a knock-on effect into retention too. Like let's say we think about the whole thing's got to be different, but that's the same with everything. And I think if you're really deep on who you're attracting in the marketing, then and your sales process matches that, then you're bringing in the right person. So because you've done a good job of attracting the right person and selling to the right person, that person then is likely to stay for a lot longer inside the business. So I think getting that first bit right, I think everything sort of downstream from lead gen has that knock on. And I think the fact that, so an example of that early on, one of the first programs that we sold, so we started off with a 2-week free trial, and then we turned it into a 4-week paid program. And the first sort of run of that, I think we sold like 25 of them, and it was called the transformation program. And we found that people came, we transformed them in 4 weeks, and they left because we transformed them. And literally we'd sold them the result, they got the result, and then left. So we sat down and was like, literally all of them was, and the thing was, they were all like dead positive feedback, loved it, literally all got results, but none of them stayed. So we sat down and was like, thought about it, and was like, well, what about instead of selling the transformation program, if we sold them the foundation program? So we laid the foundation for long-term progress. Then all the language became about the fact that we can't solve your problem in 4 weeks, but we can do a large chunk of it and start to make you think differently and behave differently. and we can lay the foundation for long-term progress. And funnily enough, like that, just literally the same program, instead of transformation, foundation, it made a dramatic difference to sales, but then retention on the back of that.
I think it's the, as you say, it's the framing of it as well. If you sell a, I'm not saying this was a quick fix, but if you do sell a quick fix, then you can't be surprised when people tend to leave.
Yeah.
Would you say then that for you, it's almost like selling the community works better than selling a result? I don't know if that's putting words in your mouth, but is it kind of that to a degree?
There's an element of that. I think that's a whole different argument that I have with other gym owners as well, because we were always told to not sell the community. No one's buying the community, but we definitely get people on the phone who say, I want to join somewhere that has a strong community, or they'll say something like, I want to join somewhere where I can feel a part of something. So I think when you listen to, when we listen to like mentors who said, don't sell that, but then we actually listen to the feedback's telling us that people do want that. It's difficult to sell the community in the sense of like, people can't feel that benefit. So if you tell someone like you'll be a part of a community that's supporting you, for example, as almost like a sales statement, like it's hard to tangibly feel what that means. I think the community is more like once they experience it, then they're like, I get this. So we do promote the community. We share a lot about it. I think part of the reason we do that is because our ideal client is someone who's been inactive for 5 to 10 years and has had a bad experience in the gym. So with that being the case, I want to show them an environment again instead of saying it, show it. I want to show them that the environment is different. So we'll show like, a couple of people with their arms around each other, like smiling, maybe a group shot at the end of a big workout, and try and show the fact that it is a friendly place. That's kind of one of the objections that we try and overcome through that marketing. So we do show that community, but I do think there's a little element of sort of selling what they want and giving what they need. So sometimes I don't like our marketing, especially at the point of like the direct trying to make the sale, because it is a little bit like fat lossy and but it is an element of like give them what they want, sell them what they want, give them what they need.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And it's the kind of thing where, again, maybe this is a bit fitness specific, but I think people can be very precious about what they say. Yeah. And it's the classic example of a lot of trainers don't want to use a word like toned, even though 90% of their clients might be saying toned.
Yeah.
But it kind of reminds me of the community thing. One of the best examples I've seen is Mark Fisher Fitness in New York, where for people who don't know, he's sort of very out there. I think he's an ex-Broadway actor himself. A lot of their clientele are Broadway actors. It's absolutely not everyone's cup of tea because is it Fitness for Unicorns? Is their branding or tagline?
Oh God, yeah. It's ninjas, but in the unicorn clubhouse.
That's it. Yeah. The clubhouse, all that kind of stuff, like training in hot pants and everything.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of optional, not mandatory. But it's that kind of thing, and almost not being afraid to be different as well. Because I guess probably some of your marketing, other fitness people might look at it and be like, oh, that's not serious enough if you're talking about pizza and beer and that kind of thing. And they might be all about the result. But ultimately, you're appealing to the people who you want to attract. And you're not really bothered about people who are not going to join you anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly that. Like, obviously, one side of the marketing is to push people away as much as draw people in. And there's an element of the fitness industry. There's 10 to 15%, I would say. It might be more, but like who are purely obsessed on result. And it's not, when I say that, it sounds as if platform doesn't get a result and it is all about pizza and beers. Like, it's not. I think it's the person that we attract, because it's someone who's been out the gym 5-10 years and it's someone who has had a bad experience in the gym. They're not going to go to any other gym. It's not like it's us versus somewhere else. It's us or nowhere. And I think for a lot of those people, they're probably mid-30s and above. They've got a stressful job. They've got kids. They're not trying to step on a stage. They're probably not trying to do like a High Rocks or an Affex or a Turf Games. They literally want an area in their life where they can provide some them time. They can do some things that helps them undo the other stuff that they do, whether it's like having a drink on a weekend or the stress of their actual like sort of corporate job. So for those people, like the result that they get is different to them. For some of those people, it is like I want to come and I want to hit a 150 squat or whatever. Like, but for some of those people, it's like I just want to be active for the first time ever. I want to be consistent for more than a few months. Like for a lot of people, that's what it is. The result is that. So I think that varies person to person.
But I think the sort of the polarization aspect almost in terms of what you said that I like is that you know who you don't want to attract, you know who you want to push away. And I've seen the same. Like with my marketing, I try and lean into the bits I know really resonate with me and other people and try to not talk about so much the other stuff, I guess, because ultimately, especially even more so if you working with people in person, you don't want someone who either doesn't want to be there or feels missold or just maybe not those things, but just isn't your type of person, right? It's stressful, it's draining. All of a sudden, you're back to that point where you're waking up stressed about what you're doing for the day.
Yeah, exactly that. And we don't want our service to be a stress on top of our members' stress. So again, like we try and make it the best hour of the day. We want it to be an experience every time they come in. One of the things that I say to the team is like I try and say like we're not a fitness business, we're a customer service business that happens to be done through fitness. And with that, it's the experience. It's that experience they get through fitness, that customer service they get through fitness. I think it just kind of reframes it. On the Matt Fisher point, I think one of the things that he had. So I've met him a couple of times, and he is a crazy guy. He, like you say, the clubhouse is a crazy place. So one of the things he said is he has a wall of dildos as soon as you walk in, and it's to make sure that the wrong people don't train there. So like as soon as you walk in, if that offends you, like you shouldn't be a member there. His avatar is crazy. His avatar is a gay Broadway actor who's got AIDS. That's actually his avatar. So when they're crafting content, they're trying to speak to that person. And obviously with that, like, you know, he's not only going to attract that person, but he's going to attract people around that niche. And ultimately, because they're based just off Broadway, so he tracks a lot of actors, a lot of people, either on stage or on film. And he said for those people, they're often like outcasts in their society. So it's kind of a place where like the outcasts can be. And so, for example, with that being his avatar and with the wall of dildos, like it'll push away the people who aren't the outcasts and bring sort of the outcasts in is like his logic to it.
Yeah, you can't see many sort of typical macho Wall Street bankers heading there for work already, which is absolutely fine. They'll go somewhere else because that's not the place for them.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk about is the business side of things, the mentoring side of things you're doing. So tell us a bit about that. Like, was that had you always wanted to do that, or was it something that just opened up organically?
Yeah, completely organically. I think there's one of those sayings where it's like the best businesses to start are the ones where you're already doing it or already been asked for it. So over the years through running platform, we had a lot of like sort of members come to us and be like, "Can you just explain how you've done your marketing, how you do branding, how you manage your team?" Friends, family, and then other sort of local businesses. And it got to a point over the years where we was almost unofficially mentoring people. And that kind of grew and grew, and it got to a point where there was a couple of people where we were literally like meeting them regularly, like monthly or semi-regular, and like over the next 3 months, focus on this. Right, you've done that, now focus on this. And through 2023, it's just kind of ramped up the amount of people that were asking us, and it got to a point where there was like a week where like 4 or 5 people were sort of asking questions around their business and could we help them and blah blah. And so I chatted to Steve and said, this is kind of getting to a point where we should probably have some sort of actual mentorship for it. I think part of the reason behind that as well was we'd say to someone like, you should do this, but they couldn't do it because, for example, they didn't have a CRM, so they couldn't send emails or, like that sort of stuff. So it was like the best way we could help people is we need to get these foundations in place and then we can start to do this stuff on top. So that was what we did. We put the feelers out to everyone who had kind of expressed interest, and we got like 10 businesses jump on board in like that first sort of 12-week program we put together. And then it's just sort of evolved from there. It's something that we want to keep like small, so we can really give like a handful of businesses a lot of attention rather than bring a lot of businesses and doing sort of like a big group program. We really want to be in the nitty gritty with these businesses and support them. So we kind of help people who are either start up or been going for a couple of years and maybe screwing it up a little bit and struggling with, they've had a member of staff who they couldn't manage properly and so they've left, and maybe they've struggled with the lead flow being consistent, that sort of stuff. So then that's where we'll come in and help put the systems in place across operations, marketing, sales, and then from there, then we can, once we've got that foundation in place, we can kind of give a bit more bespoke advice in terms of, right, let's focus on this is the strategy, and et cetera, et cetera.
Like it. It's interesting because I was speaking in a previous episode to someone because he'd also done something similar with his business, started off and then went into mentoring, and we had the chat about how it's funny that that's almost seen as a bad thing or a negative thing, or people think you're just trying to grift, you're trying to, scam people out of money. And unfortunately, there are people who do that. They'll have, particularly in fitness, you get it in copywriting as well, but they'll have maybe 3 or 4 months are pretty good, and all of a sudden they go, oh, I'm going to teach this to other people.
Yeah.
But I think if you've done it organically, like you said, if you've got people actually reaching out and asking for it, that's kind of why I started doing copywriting courses, was because people said, oh, I want to do what you do. And actually, part of it was selfish because it almost got tiring to have to type out the same response over and over again, or just end up saying the same thing day after day. I was like, I'm just going to put together a course. But the other thing was, it seems like people actually want this. And I think if people actually want it and are reaching out to you, as you said, it's like, yeah, that's the easiest type of business to start.
100%. I think I was conflicted with it at first because I was like, just if you want to grow your business, just grow your business. Like, you don't have to grow another business. Like, and so I was a little bit conflicted with it. But then when I started to see the impact that we could have on people and how we really help the businesses, as I said before, there was a lady who thought within 12 months she wanted to go full time, and I think she did it in like 7 weeks. There's been other circumstances where businesses that were going to shut the doors and we've managed to keep them open. Now they're thriving and looking at more sites. And there's one, fully enough, you were talking about dog walkers before. There's a dog walker that we help. He had no structure in terms of how he collected cash, so we put like some systems in place there, and for the first time ever he was able to have time off at Christmas and didn't lose a salary. So it's things like that that are quite impactful. I think with us working with like that small business, that like really like one man band, or there's a couple of people in the company, it has a very direct impact on that person's life. Probably similar to personal training. So the difference there for me when I got into the industry was I started off in strength and conditioning and then shifted over to personal training. So I started off professional sport and then went into Gen Pop. And I think that with professional sport, it was a bit like you didn't really get the reward. With Gen Pop, like you really helped someone's life. And I think it's similar with the mentoring that we do, that the impact we have on their business dramatically changes their life as well. A lot more time, a lot more money, a lot more freedom on a very personal level rather than just, adding another zero to someone's bottom line.
What sort of businesses are you working with?
So unsurprisingly, there's a few gyms in there, physio, barbershop, a co-working space. We did work with a local paper. That was cool. Yeah, it's a mixture. It's more so we niche around service businesses. If it's coming into supply chains and pipelines and changing stock and stuff like that, that's not us. If it's the operations, the sales, the marketing strategy behind building a service business, then that is where we do well. Especially around sort of like recruitment, leadership, managing team. I think that's a big point. Once we've got those foundations in place and now the business starting to grow, bringing that team in is a big area we help with. This is how you should be leading someone, because I've got a lot of strong opinions on that a lot of people get wrong.
And what are the main things you help with then? Is it like a sales lead to marketing? Is it more operations, like very varied?
It does vary. I think this is a bit of giving what they want and selling what they need, I think, because I think that people need more operational support, but people think they need more sales and marketing support. The issue is, if we just went in and turned ads on for someone who's got no operational structure, they might as well just set that money on fire, because it's all well and good going, right, we've got 30 leads to ring this week. What's your sales process when they come in? What's the follow-up process? What's the script like we're taking them through on the call for a sale, if that's the funnel? Once they've purchased, what's the onboarding sequence like? What's the next step for that? What's the immediate thing that happens? What's the first in-person contact? What's the second, third? How do your team interact with them? How do the team know that they're on the first contact, second contact, and so on and so on? So that's a lot of things that have got to happen after the sale, and that's before the lead has been generated. So I think most people think they need more sales and more leads, but really they need more operational structure. So there's an element of that. So we try and again, though, when you get someone on the phone and tell them you need more operations, they don't want to buy. So there's an element of, we've now found ways that we can get people quick wins that don't destroy the business, but at the same time, then we can really start accelerating that operational structure, so that once these new people start coming in, we generate more free cash and we start running ads, we've got some structure there we can take them through.
Yeah, I think that's on the money, because one of my clients recently, we surveyed the entire audience, and it was something like people had to select first of all, it was their revenue bracket, and it was kind of under 100k, 100 to 500k, 500 million. I think we then had 1 million to 5 mil, and then over 5 mil. And then we gave them 5 options for what's your biggest struggle. And it was things like operations, it was spending too much time in the business, not having a personal brand, something else. And the other one was sales and marketing, sales and leads. And every single income bracket put sales and leads as the top one. Yeah. It varied between kind of 45% of people and about 70% of people saying it was their biggest problem. Yeah. But that one came out on top, and you're like, well, if a business that's potentially, not even making anything has a sales and leads problem, and a business doing over 5 million has a sales and leads problem, that goes in exactly what you said to actually, maybe it is always an underlying problem, but it's probably just how people see it at the end of the day.
100%, and I think it comes, especially a business at that sort of size, then it comes down to the customer retention. Like if they never lost any customer that they sold, they wouldn't have a sales and leads problem. They'd have a we have a too many customers in the service problem. Which fair, you're probably never going to get to a point where you never lose a customer again. But you can definitely get, like, we've extended our customer lifetime value from 9 months to like 26, median length of stay. Made a dramatic difference to how many sales we need to make because people are staying like 2.5 times longer. So yeah, I think especially those big businesses, they haven't got a lead gen problem, they've got a keeping people problem.
Yeah, and sometimes when you have to run the numbers of someone to show them that, in terms of, okay, what if we could keep 20% more people? Or what if we could keep the average person, like say 2 months longer, 3 months longer? People don't realise how much of an impact that makes their bottom line, a year, 5 years, 10 years down the line. And it's often you need that demonstration or to put the numbers on paper for them to go, maybe I need to focus more on that rather than just spending more on Facebook ads or improving my front end copy, let's say.
That's it, but the Facebook ads are the front end copy of the website. That's the sexy stuff. The operational, let's tweak this email that goes out on day 7 isn't as sexy as like, what do my ads say and what's my lead cost and what's my acquisition cost. But I think having that shift to what would happen in this business if we could not make another sale for the next 6 months, what would it look like? Like, oh shit, most people are going to leave. Well, you should probably fix that before you do more sales.
Yeah, I like that. So we'll wrap up with the final 5 in a minute. But first up, Mark, where can people find you if they want to reach out and know a bit more about you?
Yeah, so my personal Instagram is mark_platform. Relentless Business Mentoring is at Relentless Business Mentoring. And then platform is at Platform PT Gym.
Perfect. I should put all those in the description for the video. But on to the final 5. So question number 1, if you could gift any business, copywriting, marketing or mindset book to someone, what would it be and why?
I'm going to say Influence by Cialdini, because I think that was a real turning point for me in running a business, that I could understand that I could influence people towards what I wanted them to do. And in doing that, I could help more people because if I can get more people into my service, I know how much my service can change someone's life. And if I could help them understanding why they should, then it can have that impact. So I'd say influence. I feel like influence underpins so much of your business, not just the marketing and sales. So yeah, I'll go for that.
Yep, I'd agree with that. Next one, we're going for a coffee and I'm buying. What's your order?
Oh, if you're buying, then no, I'll go for a cappuccino. If I'm feeling extra fruity, I might get a hazelnut shot in there.
Very fancy. Question 3 is, you're in charge of the internet and you can get rid of one social media platform. Which one are you going to choose?
Whoa, get rid of one social media. I would say we make a lot of money from it, but I'm not sure if I'd close it. Facebook needs some changes. I'm going to say Facebook. Yeah.
Then question 4, you're hosting a dinner party. You can have any 3 people, living or dead. Who are you going to invite?
I think about this question all the time, and I've been panicking about it all the way through this interview. So Muhammad Ali. I'm a real astronomy geek, so I think I'm going to go Isaac Newton. And then who would I have? Ricky Gervais, someone like that, I think, for a bit of humour.
Nice.
Might be a bit heavy with Isaac Newton there, so we'll get Ricky Gervais there as well.
Sounds like a good mix. And then finally, say there's someone who wants to do what you're doing, be where you are. What's your best bit of advice for them?
I think I said this earlier, so I'm gonna go with the fact that you can fail doing the safe thing, so you might as well fail chasing your dream.
Brilliant, love it. Thank you very much, Mark. Really appreciate your time today, mate. It's been very interesting, loads to take away. So yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me on. Cheers
for watching again, guys. I'll pop the links that Mark mentioned in the comments. Any questions for either of us, just put them down below as well. As always, likes, subscribe, shares, always appreciated, and I shall catch you next time round.